Welcome to another jam-packed episode of the Sports Card Nation podcast, the show that brings you all the important news from the sports card hobby. We'll have some debates, opinions, new release schedules, and info. Plus, we'll also discuss the sports that so directly affect the hobby we all love. We'll mix in an occasional gambling tip or two, throw in some life stuff, and bring you great guest interviews from the hobby and sports dignitaries. And if you're good listeners, we may even give away a few things now and then. Now, here's the guy who wanted the cards and not the gum, John Newman.
All right, we're back. Episode 10. We're in double digit, folks, here on the Sports Card Nation podcast. Really happy the way things are going. I hope you enjoyed the show. We've really made improvements. If you go back and listen to episode 1, it's sort of night and day from where we started, as to be expected. I think anything in life you try to improve upon, the more you do it. So here we are, episode 10, jam-packed. I always say jam-packed, but we are jam-packed. Real excited for today's guest on the show today, Tim Virgilio of Signatures for Soldiers. Tim started Signatures for Soldiers in 2014. It's an organization that sells signed cards, memorabilia, and I learned on the show today, any cards, game used, regular cards, anything, he'll take anything. He sells the cards to raise money for injured and homeless veterans, the heroes of this country. Something very important to me. I come from sort of a military family, but regardless of that fact, even if I didn't, our America's heroes are very important. We have the freedoms we have today because of them, past and present. And the fact that he's doing something to help that segment out is really special. He's going to be on. We're going to talk about what he does, but we're also going to talk about how he got started in the hobby. I always ask whoever we have on their beginnings, their how they got involved in the cards in the first place. And you'll notice a lot of times a lot of those stories are kind of similar, and it's funny because what Tim told me it really hit home because we really have similar backgrounds as far as how we got our start in the hobby. So that's a pretty cool thing. The 2019 Hall of Fame baseball class was announced. 4 gentlemen are entering the hall. One of them is deceased in Roy Halladay. I'm gonna discuss my thoughts on the 4, what I think, what I thought of the voting, their stats, some interesting stats you may not be aware of. I'll share with you as well. I think you'll find interesting. We're gonna talk about NFL football, and we're gonna start with the hot button topic, the officiating. And anytime you're talking about officiating, that's not a good thing. And we're going to give a preview of the 2019 Tops Baseball Series 1, which is coming out Wednesday. So put your helmet on, get in the batter's box. Here we go. We love hearing from our listeners. Without you, there is no us. We encourage your thoughts and feedback, and we do care about what you think. We encourage you to reach out to us at any of our social media accounts, and they are as follows. You can get a hold of us on Instagram at Sports Card Nation Podcast. That's all one word, Sports Card Nation Podcast. Or our Twitter, which is at Sports Card Natty 1, Sports Card NATI 1. Or if you go to Facebook, you can search Sports Card Nation Podcast. That's 4 words, and you'll find us. Or you can email the show at sportscardnationpc@gmail.com. Also, please give us a follow. We really do appreciate that. Thank you. All right, it's time for What's Crackin'. All right, time for the weekly release schedule. Let's start with football. January 30th, Leaf All-American Football Vault will be out. On the basketball side, on the same day, on the 30th, 2019 Donruss Optic Basketball. And on baseball, on the 30th, 2 products are coming out. First one is TriStar Hidden Treasures Autographed Baseball Platinum Edition. And the flagship from Topps Baseball, their 2019 Series 1 And I don't know about you, but I always get excited when the new Topps comes out. It signifies that we're getting closer to the start of a new baseball season. Pitchers and catchers reporting soon. The new look cards, what are the cards going to look like? Inserts, the autos, that feeling you get. Everyone, if you open packs, you open wax, you get that feeling. One thing, one of my goals of collecting and ripping packs in 2019 was that I'm going to open more hobby. I kind of opened, to be blunt honest, way too much retail from Walmart and Target. I did pull some things, but as we all know, if you're in this hobby long enough, a lot of those bigger hits and good stuff comes from those full hobby boxes. So one of my goals of 2019 was to open more hobby. I've already pre-ordered, just to make sure I hit that goal. I've actually pre-ordered a lot of the 2019 baseball products that I do want to open already, so I know I won't miss out. I also know by doing it in that fashion that the temptation to go to Walmart and buy a blaster box won't be as strong. So I've kind of got started early on hitting some of the goals I set for 2019. And while we're talking about 2019 and that first release of Topps is coming out, let's preview that release and talk about what's in that, what the cards may look like, and that sort of thing. So right off the top, the pack format is actually going to change. So instead of the usual 36 packs, 10 cards per pack box, it's now going to be a 24 pack box. But instead of 10 cards, there'll be 14 cards per pack. So there'll be more cards per pack at 4 and 10 less packs, or 12 less packs. So instead of the 36 and 10 format, it's going to be 24 and 14. That's in the non-jumbo, just regular hobby. It's a 350 card set. It will have the usual suspects when it comes to parallels. Rainbow foil are 1 in 10 packs. Golds are back. Obviously, going to be numbered to 2019. Vintage stock returns numbered to 99. Independence Day to 76. The blacks are back to 67. Mother's Day pink to 50. Father's Day blue to 50. Memorial Day camo to 25. Platinums at 1-in-1s. And printing plates, obviously, at 1-in-1s as well. The 150th anniversary logo parallels are 1 in 6 packs. Short prints and super short prints will obviously make their return. That'll be to be determined, obviously. When it comes to inserts, there's the Greatness Returns subset. The 35th anniversaries are back, this time spotlighting the 1984 Topps set. 150 years of baseball inserts, which feature 50 greatest players of all time, 50 greatest moments of all time, and the 50 greatest seasons of all time that make up the 150 cards of that set. Those inserts will have parallel versions of the 150th anniversary at numbered to 150, reds numbered to 10, and the obviously 101 platinums. And Topps is once again doing something I actually really kind of don't like, is they're bringing back the iconic card reprint set, where they do famous rookie cards and they reprint them and they look, just to me, too similar to the real rookie card. And those will have a 150th anniversary parallel as well, numbered to 150. The main autographs will be 1984 designed, and they will consist again of the 150th anniversary, numbered to 150, golds numbered to 50 or less, reds numbered to 25 or less, and the 101 platinums. Relic cards will fall under the same format as well, 84 designed with the same parallel numbered versions. And there's also a hard to pull Legacy of Baseball dual autographs, and each one of these cards is numbered to just 5 copies each. There will also be baseball autograph relics, and they'll have Reds numbered to 25 or less and the 1-of-1 platinum versions as well. There'll also be the 1-of-1 in the name relics featuring whole letters from the All-Star Game workout jerseys, and historic homes relic inserts featuring parts of legendary ballparks such as Yankee Stadium, seats, and that sort of thing. The silver pack promotion is back. You get 1 silver pack per hobby box purchase, 2 silver packs per jumbo card. To describe what the base card kind of design looks like, it's a half-bordered card. On the vertical cards, the border is on the right and bottom side of the card. It has racing stripes that kind of makes up that border divide, and they're obviously in the form of the team colors of the player depicted on the card. Predominantly white. It has that pixelation, kind of that computer graphic pixelation too around that border as well. And there is no border on the left side and top side of the vertical cards. On the bottom, the last name is bold and larger than the first name, which is underneath the last name. I like them. They're clean looking, sharp. I like kind of white colored cards as long as there's some color, which there is. I'm going to open some of the product. It sounds like it's loaded with insert sets and different parallels as normal. So we'll see how the product does. As always, it'll do well upon initial release, but we'll see what kind of staying power it does have once out there. All right, joining me now on the Sports Card Nation podcast guest line is Tim Virgilio. Tim is from Signatures for Soldiers. It's an organization I've kind of followed the last few months. However, they've been around since 2014. It's a great organization, it sounds like, and they sell memorabilia and cards, signed cards, and those funds go to disabled and homeless veterans, those that serve this country and those we should be thankful for. So what Tim's doing is tremendous. I know he's been on a lot of these podcasts and shows and media, so he's probably done this a lot of times, but it's very important what he's doing. It's awesome what he's doing, and I definitely wanted to have him on this podcast as well. So here he is. Without further ado, Tim, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me on. I'm always humbled when people ask me to be on the podcast and talk about what I'm doing. So I really appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, thank you. And I know you're busy. I follow you on Twitter and some of the other social media. You're really, correct me if I'm wrong, you're kind of a one-man band at this point.
Yeah, pretty much. I'd say 98% of the autographs that get sold, I literally have here in my house.
Yeah.
So really, I spent today just going through a lot of stuff and organizing and trying to get stuff ready to sell again. So, there's always new stuff coming in every day. So, so at this point, it is kind of me, but, I've literally hundreds of people that are helping out in some way, shape, or form, whether it's passing the word on social media or collecting autographs and then sending them to me or just different things like that. So there's a lot of people that go into making signatures for Soldiers, what it is.
Yep, and I know I've heard you numerous times, even whether it be print or even verbally, say, there is no signature for Soldiers without everyone out there. And it's funny on a smaller scale, even with the podcast, I always say, if no one listens, we're not a podcast without the listeners. So it's kind of up the same alley, although, what you're doing's a lot beneficial, than someone listening to a podcast for an hour.
Yeah, and I'm totally humbled and appreciative of the support that I get day in and day out from everybody.
Yeah, and it's one of those. I come from a military family myself. While I never served myself, I have a fond appreciation for what those men and women have done and are doing. It's always a big pet peeve of mine. Memorial Day or Veterans Day, and everyone's showing all the love for the vets and those serving those days. But I always post on my social media, they're out there 24/7. This isn't a one day where we show appreciation for one day. That's a 365, 24/7. And some obviously, have made the ultimate sacrifice. Others have been hurt or wounded and injured, and I know what you do actually directly helps them out, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and it's when I started this whole thing, as I've said many times before, if somebody had told me I'd be in the position that I am now, when I first started, I would not have believed them. Because my original goal was simply to raise, a couple $100. I think my original goal was like $500 to raise, and I've surpassed that and then some. Yeah,
I saw that. I know you're over 40K at this point.
Yeah, actually, I did some updates today, and I'm now over 41,000.
All right, there you go. That's tremendous, and like you said, you went from a $500 goal to 41. That's just amazing when you really think about it.
Yeah, it's been quite surreal for me. So it's the whole experience, and just the fact that I had a hand in raising $41,000 for a charity that helps our disabled veterans and homeless veterans. It's truly a blessing for me to do that. Yeah,
it's great. Like I said, we need more. We need more of that, not less. So, but before we get into the charitable aspect, which is obviously super important, I want to kind of, and I know you've probably done this numerous times, but give me your hobby background. How did you kind of get started in the hobby in general?
Like most kids, I literally grew up collecting baseball cards. That was kind of my first love, my first hobby. Collecting baseball cards, putting rubber bands around them, throwing them in a shoebox, keeping them under the bed, those stories. And then, I really kind of grew up during the, what they call now the junk pack era.
Yeah.
Is really when the hobby really took off for me, and baseball has always kind of been really important for me as a recreational thing, but then also it was a way for my dad and I to really connect when I was a kid, watching the game, playing together, having a catch. My dad grew up with the Yankee dynasties in the Bronx, so he and I would talk about that all the time, and I remember one day, he was telling me a story about how he used to write to Mickey Mantle and Yogi Berra and Whitey Ford and Roger Maris and so forth and so on, and send them either baseball cards or like photo clippings for them to sign, and he'd get them back, and that really got me into starting to do more of the autograph collecting, and my father and I would go to card shows all the time where they would have guests signing, and we would just literally spend a day, a weekend doing that type of stuff. And then I got into doing through the mail autographs, and when those would come in, my dad and I would talk about the player that I got back, and just things like that. So really, that's kind of how I got into it. And then like everybody else, I went off to college, and the hobby kind of fell by the wayside. Got out of college, started to get back into it, and it's pretty much been collecting in some way, shape, or form for 30 plus years now.
Yeah, and it's funny. You mentioned like kind of that bonding that the cards did for you and your dad and the sport of baseball in general. And that's, I just sometimes wonder, even in today's day and age, that's sort of a lost art, or it's not what like it was when we were, younger. I'm sure it still happens, and I don't want, but I think some of the romanticism, I wonder how much that really goes on. Because when we were young, I think I'm speaking for you here. You can correct me. We weren't concerned so much about the values like kids are today, and what's this worth. And obviously you wanted to get your favorite player or someone you admired, and chances are they were probably good, but it wasn't so eccentric around, what can I sell this for? What's this worth? I want this, I don't want this, kind of a thing. Even for me, I've said on the show previous, I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York, and we would go to the corner store and buy baseball packs, and my friends more wanted the gum, and I actually was the rare exception that wanted the cards. So we would buy packs, and I would give them my gum, and then I would get some of their cards. So, it's but like you with my grandfather, my dad, it's sort of a rite of passage with the sport and the cards, and I originally, I'm a Mets fan now, and I believe you are as well.
I am.
Yep.
I am. Yeah, I grew up with the Mets of the early to mid '80s.
Yeah.
And the '86 team, and so I've been a fan of the Mets my whole life. So.
Yeah. And now I when I was younger, growing up in Brooklyn, I was actually a fan of the Yankees and the Mets, if that's possible. But I was different leagues. And I remember, it's a different age. I mean, like you said, your dad and you would write to. I got like Thurman Munson to sign a picture and send it back. Willie Randolph, Craig Nettles, and that stuff rarely it's not the same anymore. I think some of the business aspect of it kind of ruined it, where these guys kind of know they're probably just reselling it, put money in their own pockets and that sort of thing. And it's kind of ruined it for those who really do admire the player and just really want an autograph for themselves, for their wall, for their desk,
Right.
And so that stuff I don't think occurs, like it did in the 70s and even the 80s and whatnot. So, unfortunately, but that's, times change. So that's, what are you going to do? You just,
Yep.
But what you do, and what you're doing now is, those players that maybe will sign now because they know, that this is obviously for a charity for veterans and that stuff. So it's nice that they know that it's not going to, someone who just, it is going to someone who wants the piece, but
Right.
but for a good cause behind it,
Yeah, absolutely. And there's definitely a couple guys that have said, pretty much anything that I send them, they'll sign for me, and really don't sign otherwise unless they're, unless they're a guest at a show to sign there.
Yeah.
So, so there definitely are a few guys that are like that, knowing what I'm doing and knowing that when I sell the autograph, 100% of the money goes directly to the charity.
Yeah. I think it's a big fear for players, current and former, that they're just people are monopolizing for themselves on their signatures or
Sure.
memorabilia. So in your case, you know what I mean? They know it's going to a great cause. And I think, when you think about the military, I don't care who you are. I don't care your personal beliefs. There's very few people who don't have a past or current member of the family who served in the military. So there's always that thread, that connection,
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody knows somebody, somehow that either has served or is serving. So, it's amazing when you start talking with people, they start sharing that connection to the military, like you said with yourself, you have family members that have served,
Yep.
It always seems like everybody has a story, which is great, that they want to share with somebody about, somebody that they know that served and what their experience was.
Yeah, and I mean it trumps policy. Bad pun not intended, but whether you're a fan of the politics going on or any kind of decisions going on in the political world, it still comes down that these people, everyone, like I said, knows somebody who's served or is serving, and that's when you boil it down to that level, that's really what it's about.
Absolutely.
When you first got started, did you go right? How soon did you kind of approach players in the sports field and say, "Hey, I'm getting this thing off the ground. Anything you could do is did you kind of build it up first, or did you kind of attack it right out the gate?"
Yeah, as I had said, collecting autographs has been a hobby of mine for 30 plus years, and the charity that I support is called Military Missions in Action.
Mm-hmm.
They're based in North Carolina, and when my wife and I were living there, we were really involved with them, and then we moved out of state, so I really wanted to continue to support them, and every charity can always use money.
Yeah.
So, so I started thinking of ways that I could try to help raise, a few dollars, and that's literally what I was trying to do. So, I had this large collection of cards, and I just started to reach out to players and ask them if they would sign a couple cards, and with my intent of selling them, and 100% of the money going directly to Military Missions in Action. And, it was just kind of a slow build that way. I had one of the first guys to sign for me was Barry Lyons, former catcher for the Mets.
Yep.
And, he was very agreeable to do it. Got the cards back from him and posted it on social media, and a lady contacted me and told me that she would give me, I think I had like 10 cards signed or something like that, and she said, I'll give you $200 for all of them.
Wow.
And I was like, and I wanted, as much as I wanted to say yes, I also wanted to be fair about, kind of fair market value. So she and I kind of had that discussion and came to, a price that we were both agreeable with, and I think that was really the first time that I realized that I could, if I sustained this and continued to build it, that I could really raise some significant money for Military Missions in Action. So, it was just kind of that slow build. After that one, I reached out to another player, and then another player, and then another player. After a while, I had kind of this core group of guys that were signing for me, and then I would contact another player, and they weren't quite sure, and somehow they knew one of the players that was signing for me. And that player vouched for me, and it just kind of grew like that. So so it's been it's just kind of been like I said, a slow build for a while, but now it's really kind of has a foothold in the hobby community, I'd like to think, and people are just really supportive of it now. And I went from just contacting the players to now I have collectors from literally all over the country that will send me autographed items that they have that they want to donate and have me sell, and money go to charity. So that's really kind of where we are currently, and it's been a great experience.
Yeah, tremendous. And like you said, it sounds like a lot of, even with the players, word of mouth, even on their part, has kind of helped the organization. You know what I mean? Hey, I'm doing this. Or like you said, in one case, a player might be a little leery, but knew the other one was involved, and that,
right.
Yeah,
and then, through, my social media presence on Twitter and Facebook, I've had players just spontaneously reach out to me, but they followed what I'm doing and then have decided, hey, I want to help out. The most recent was this past baseball season. Get a message from Adam Jones with the Baltimore Orioles, saying, hey, been checking out what you're doing, and I'd like to help out. How can I help? And so, he and I were able to meet at a game, and he donated a bat that he signed, and so just things like that, and just even now when those things still happen, it still is humbling and surreal for me.
Yeah, no doubt.
That a player like Adam Jones would, find me on Twitter and follow what I'm doing for a period of time, and then decide, I'm gonna pitch in and help out. And it's just, that the generosity never gets lost on me.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, and that's the great thing. I mean, I think by nature, I think most humans do want to help other people if they can, and that's the good thing with most people, is that kind of instinct is in there, So let me ask you this. I know you started obviously as a collector and whatnot, now, doing this, which is tremendous work. Has it kind of, have you went away from like your own collecting and kind of like, has it drawn you away from your own personal end of the hobby?
To some degree, yes. I don't collect nearly on the level that I did. I've kind of narrowed my focus a little bit more into just collecting certain items or certain players. I continue to collect autographs of pretty much any player that's ever worn a Mets uniform.
Yeah.
So kind of I'm working on an all-time Mets collection there, autograph collection there. My favorite college team is the University of North Carolina, so pretty much anybody that's ever played at the University of North Carolina, whether it's basketball, football, or baseball,
okay.
I collect their autographs. One of the first sets that my father and I put together when I was a kid was the 85 Topp set.
Yep.
So I'm working on that as an autograph set.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And then, those are kind of the main focus. And then as far as just kind of a player collection, as far as unsigned stuff, is Greg Jeffries.
Yeah, not to cut you off, Tim. It's funny you mentioned Greg Jeffries, and you're not going to believe this. Greg, when I was younger, obviously I had different favorite players, but during, 89, and he was a prospect in the Mets system, and I followed from literally 86 when he was with Columbia. I was a huge Greg Jeffries fan. Like if there was a super, we know it's like super collectors now. There wasn't really a common phrase heard back then, but I was a Greg Jeffries super collector before that even existed. So I have like 2-3 ring binders somewhere. I got they're probably in my garage, just filled with like every Greg Jeffries card. I actually got to meet him a few times. I'm here in the Syracuse area, which is either the Chiefs or Sky Chiefs. They've been the Blue Jays minor league team. And so whenever Tidewater or Norfolk came in, and he was there, I always went to the games. I got to talk to him a little bit, kind of told him, hey, you're my favorite player, and, I've been following you. Really nice guy, had a pretty decent career, got, some injuries late and kind of shortened his career, but really, really good guy, and so it's funny you mentioned him, because we're that was right up my alley, and I saw that too.
Yeah. So he's a player that I've just really started to focus in on collecting cards from. Because for a while there I was like, I really want to just focus in on one player to collect, and I wasn't quite sure who. Yeah. And Greg Jeffries has been signing for signatures for Soldiers for a while. He's a big supporter. He's been great. Yeah. And then this past August, I was invited to attend the National Sports Collectors Convention in Cleveland to set up a booth there. So I was there for all 5 days, and then Greg Jeffries was one of the guests signing. So, one of the cool moments for me personally was, I waited in line, walked up to the front of the line. I had a vinyl signatures for Soldiers banner, and I didn't say anything to him. I just put it in front of him, and as soon as he saw it, he looked up, and his eyes got really big. He's like, "Oh man!" He's like, "Tim, it's so great to meet you." And
that's
gets
cool.
up, gives me this big bro hug, type thing.
That's awesome.
Just really, really good guy. So, and because of that experience, and then kind of being a little nostalgic going back to my childhood, he, like you said, he was the prospect for the Mets in the late 80s.
Oh yeah.
He was my guy with the Mets, and I loved watching him play, and so it's just kind of a neat little neat little side project that I have.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I'd say 98% of my time goes to collecting the autographs for signatures for soldiers and kind of cataloging them and pricing them and getting them out in front of collectors to try to sell them and make money for military missions in action. So,
yeah. It's funny you mentioned, I can remember I would keep the box scores, I would keep the stats like that. Like you said, that was my guy as well. Here you are, you coming, full circle, and now he's involved with you in what you're doing. I mean, how crazy is that,
Yeah. And that's why I said, when, over 4 years ago when I started this in 2014, somebody had said, hey, Tim, these are some of the experiences you'll have or some of the players you'll meet and things like that. I would have told you were crazy, and it's, having that experience to meet Greg Jeffries like that and just have a few minutes to talk to him and thank him in person for his support was really just an awesome experience.
Yeah, it's a win-win because what you're doing is obviously helping disabled and homeless vets, and you get kind of that personal touch out of it as well. So, it's good on both ends, which is nice. Because you are doing a lot of work as well. So I see you're all set to do the TriStar show in Houston. What else? But you can talk about that. But what else? Anything you want to promote or anything coming up now? The floor is yours, as they say.
Okay. Yeah. Well, when I was at the National in Cleveland, I was able to kind of meet some people from TriStar who I've maintained contact with, and they've invited me down to Houston to attend their show in February 8th, 9th, and 10th. Mm-hmm. So I'll be there. My wife's coming with me, and we're going to set up a table and, be selling stuff for signatures for soldiers. So if anybody's going to be at the show in Houston, certainly come by and say hello. So that's the next big thing that we got coming up. And then after that, we've been invited back to the National. This year it's going to be in Chicago.
Yep.
So beginning of August we'll be going to Chicago, setting up there again. So looking forward to that because we'll see a lot of people that we met this past year in Cleveland. So it'll be nice to kind of see those folks again and just thank them for another year of support. A lot of things have happened. Ultra Pro, who provides a lot of the supplies, they've been great since at the National and since the National, just kind of helping support what I'm doing because majority of the money that's spent on things like that comes out of my pocket. So they've been very generous with helping me with the expenses and donating a lot of supplies that I use on a regular basis. So that's been extremely,
and that helped.
Extremely helpful.
Yeah, and Ultra Pro, I'll give them a little plug. They're great. They know they help out the Codarty cards as well. So it's nice that they're stepping up and helping you out, help offset some of those overhead that's involved. People don't realize like some of the overhead and people. The other thing people don't realize is the time that goes into something like this. And it gets lost on a lot of people.
Yeah, but for me it's fun. So it when it starts being work is when I just kind of take a little bit of a break from it. Let it just sit, and then I go back to it. But majority of the time it's a lot of fun for me. It just kind of keeps me in the hobby and allows me to kind of see a lot of neat and different things that I wouldn't otherwise see. But those are probably the two big things coming up are those two shows. And then outside of that, we're just gonna kind of continue on as is, and hopefully, sometime in 2019 we'll hit the $50,000 mark of total money raised, which is even for me to say out loud is still kind of weird, but it's a very realistic goal at this point. And it's just going to kind of be continuing to reach out to players and let them know what we're doing and see if we can continue to get the support that we've gotten so far.
Well, it sounds like you got that momentum, which is key. And obviously, like doing the national, that's basically the Super Bowl of the card industry, and getting out there and getting, signatures for soldiers right out in the forefront. It just only good things can happen from that.
And being at the national was great. It was my first time there as a collector, as a vendor, and really, I couldn't have been there without, GTS distribution. Who was pretty much the driving force behind getting me there, and Ivan and Rob from Go GTS Live.
Yep.
They were really big on getting me connections to get there and be able to set up, because otherwise I don't think I would have been able to be there and do what I did. So it was really some great exposure. It was a great time. It was exhausting, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Now that I know what to expect this year, I'm looking forward to it again. It'll be a ton of fun, as it was, in August. So
yeah, but now you have that experience under your belt. So like you said, you kind of know what to expect, how to prepare, and that sort of thing.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, looking forward to it. So that'll be fun. I'm looking forward to going to Houston in February. That'll be the first time that I'll be at the TriStar show there. So that'll be fun to kind of see what that's all about, and hopefully see some people that I saw in Cleveland, and get some new supporters and meet some new people, and continue to get the word out about Signatures for Soldiers.
Yep, no doubt. Well, speaking of getting the word out, I'm going to give you this time too, Tim, to give out your social medias, how people can get in touch with you and Signatures for Soldiers, what you're kind of looking for, what they can kind of do, and that sort of thing.
Okay. Well, obviously the big thing, like I tell a lot of people, is just continuing to get the word out about Signatures for Soldiers. Right now, I have 3 social media platforms. Facebook. If you just search for Signatures for Soldiers, it'll come up. Or if you just want to type in facebook.com/signatures for soldiers, all spelled out. Also on Twitter. Twitter handle is @SIGS, SIGS, the number 4 soldiers. And then also on Instagram. So those are kind of the 3 platforms of social media that I use quite a bit. If people want to kind of email me, Signatures for Soldiers, all spelled out, @yahoo.com is the best email to reach me at. And, pretty much, like I tell people all the time, I accept pretty much anything and everything, from unsigned cards to relic cards to signed cards, whether they're certified or not. If it can raise $1, I'm willing to take it.
Yeah. Okay.
Because a lot of people hear, that I've reached 41,000, and the thing that I really try to stress to people is that I reached that mark not by selling items that are $1,000, $2,000 a piece. I've literally gotten to that point by literally selling things for $2 here, $3 there, $5 here, $10 there. So it's really,
that all adds up.
It does. A lot of people are like, "Oh, I wish I had the money to help," and it's the thing that I continue to stress to people is if enough of us just throw a couple bucks in the pot, it adds up really quick.
Oh yeah.
I'm not a coffee drinker, but the example I give all the time is, how many people Monday through Friday, without blinking, stop at some national coffee chain and drop $5, $7, $10 every day on a coffee.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Never blink.
Yeah.
So, the thing I say to folks is pick one day a month. One day a month where you bring your own coffee and you take whatever that $5 to $10 you would have spent on coffee and donate that.
Yep.
If you do that, that's $60 a year.
Yep. You bring up a great point. Even if everyone did $1 with all the people in the world, that just would be tremendous.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I think on my Facebook page, I have like 3,000 followers on my Facebook page. And if, every person that followed the page donated $1 to Military Missions in Action, that's $3,000. What that $3,000 helps Military Missions in Action do is buy the supplies to build a wheelchair ramp for a disabled military veteran.
Yep.
Because that's the average cost of a wheelchair ramp for them. So, I just use those as examples just to get people thinking that, you don't need to write that 6-figure check.
Yeah.
Literally just a couple dollars helps.
Yeah, that stuff all added together, just, small drops equals one big waterway, and that's what it's about. Well, I'm gonna pledge. I'm gonna get something together myself. I'm actually gonna get two different things together. I'm gonna get one for signatures for soldiers, and I know we talked about Greg Jeffries. I'm pretty sure I know where those two huge binders are, and I'm gonna pull some stuff out of there, and that's gonna be for you yourself, Tim.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that on both levels.
Yeah,
and it's greatly appreciated.
Well, we appreciate. I think I speak for more than myself when I say, we appreciate what you're doing as someone, like I said, who comes from a military family, and I think there's very few people who couldn't say that. So thank you for what you're doing as well.
Thanks. It's been, like I said, it's been a lot of fun. I've been truly blessed to be able to do this and just meet some amazing people, from not just the athletes, but, just everyday citizens and meet a lot of veterans that have said, I want to give back to my brotherhood. And it's been a great way to build a community that's very like-minded. And, Signatures for Soldiers is no longer about Tim Virgilio, never has been. It's become a community that is just really supportive of one another and just trying to, make a difference in this crazy world.
Yeah.
It's been a great experience, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the rest of 2019 brings for it.
Well, you have that's awesome. You have an open invitation here with the podcast. We're a weekly show, so anything you want to come on, give me 1 or 2 days notice. We'll get you on. I'll plug it. I'll promote it for you. Social media as well, not just verbal, but even social media, as we both know, is a huge thing. And I'll gladly promote any appearances or any kind of drive or event you're behind. Just let me know, and no questions asked.
Really appreciate it, and thanks for having me on. And again, I just can't express my gratitude enough for the support and just helping to get the word out.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. Check out our supporter, Break Stuff Market, your new innovative and global marketplace for trading cards, stickers, and sports memorabilia. They have some of the lowest fees on the market at only 4%. All their transactions are secure via PayPal and Stripe. It's easy to set up from any device, and they have some of the highest community and security standards to avoid being scammed. Don't wait. Join Break Stuff Market now. Go to https://breakstuff.market. It's time for From the Box Seat. All right. 4 guys are entering the Baseball Hall of Fame: Mariano Rivera, Roy Halladay, Mike Mussina, and Edgar Martinez. And the one thing that strikes me right off the bat with these 4 gentlemen is the term gentleman. These are just 4 guys who played, let's be honest, during the steroid era, but really some of the cleanest guys in the sport. You never heard them really, not a lot of controversy with any of these guys. Played the game the right way, went out there and did everything they could to help their ball clubs win ball games. You've got Roy Halladay. Unfortunately, Roy passed away in a plane crash in 2017. so he will not be there, unfortunately, to accept his honor. What a great pitcher. 203 wins, a 3.38 ERA, 2,117 strikeouts, a 2-time Cy Young Award winner, and an 8-time All-Star. His win total is a little low. At some point to that is those who argue maybe he wasn't an All-Star, but the guy consistently went out there and pitched, just was an ace pitcher. He led the majors in complete games 7 times. 5 times in strikeout to walk ratio, 4 times in innings pitched, and bases on balls per 9 innings, the least allowed, 3 times. So the numbers are there. He didn't just, he did play on some teams that weren't great. I think that attributes to some of his low win totals. I think he's a Hall of Famer. Some will argue against it, but I think he deserves to be in. I also was fortunate to get to see him play quite often. He pitched for the Syracuse Chiefs and Sky Chiefs here in Syracuse when he was in the Toronto Blue Jays organization before he made the big leagues. So I got to see Roy Halladay before he was Roy Halladay. Let's talk about Mike Mussina. 270 victories on the bump with a 3.68 ERA, 2,813 strikeouts. Mr. Mussina finished in the top 10 of the Cy Young voting 9 times. Here's an interesting stat. Hall of Famers Ivan Rodriguez, Vladimir Guerrero, George Brett, and Mike Piazza combined for 0 home runs and 160 at-bats against them. In his final season, at age 39, he won 20 games. So he went out in style. When I think of Mussina, the word grinder is the first word that comes to mind. He wasn't flashy. He didn't blow people away. He just went out there. He just finessed himself, finesse kind of pitcher, but he had 2,800 strikeouts, so he did know how to fool people. To me, he was the AL equivalent of Oral Hershiser, just that consistent guy, if that's such a thing. You knew every time he went out there, you were going to probably have trouble scoring runs, and that it was going to be a lower scoring ball game. Next gentleman I want to talk about, Edgar Martinez, career .312 batting average, did hit 309 home runs, which I actually was surprised when I looked up his stats. I didn't realize he did hit that many home runs. A little low in the RBI category at 1,261, but is a 7-time All-Star. Out of this list of 4, if I have a debate on anyone, for the most part, it is going to be Edgar. The RBI total is a little bit low. I wish it was higher. He is a solid hitter, but he was a little bit of a compiler, played a while, kind of racked these numbers up over the course of 18 years. He did not have one season where he had a 200-hit season. He did have a big 37 home run season, but he never hit 30 home runs in any other year except for that one. I probably would not have put him in had I had a vote. I think he's a very good player, but I don't think it's the Hall of Very Good. I think you have to be great to get in. Is he the only one I'd make an argument against not to be in the Hall of Fame? Nope. I think there's guys in there now that probably under the same pretext shouldn't be in as well. I think Harold Baines from last year might be the most recent that I can make an argument against. But he is the Mariners franchise leader in on-base percentage, total bases, doubles, RBIs, and base on balls. A little surprised on the ribbies that Griffey doesn't have that one. And I think the next thing I'm going to tell you is the best stat that probably a lot of people don't even realize. I didn't until I read it. In 10 seasons, Edgar had more walks than strikeouts. So he had more bases on balls than Ks. And that I don't care what you think, Hall of Famer or not Hall of Famer, that's an impressive stat. It'll be interesting to see what Edgar's rookie cards and autograph stuff do. They're not very expensive to begin with, but now with the induction, we'll see what kind of jump these lower value cards might actually make. But certainly, time to talk about the man of the hour in the Hall of Fame class, the preeminent closer of the game, the greatest closer the game has ever seen, Mariano Rivera. 82 wins, 652 saves. That's just astonishing. 652 games he came in and closed the door. 2.21 ERA, 1,173 strikeouts, and 13-time All-Star, World Series champion repeatedly. Simply the best closer in the game. No doubt, Hall of Famer, sure shot, first ballot guy. It was not a question. But there is one thing I do want to talk about. He's the first ever inductee to be unanimously voted into the Hall. He was on every ballot, the first time that's ever happened. I'm not saying he's not worthy, so maybe my problem's not that he got that distinction, but I guess my problem is that he's the first one to do it. How some of these players before him, the Willie Mazes, the Ken Griffey Jr.'s, the Hank Aaron's, the Babe Ruths, how they didn't get every vote, and Mariano's the first one that ever happens to here in 2019. That's, I guess, more the issue, that it took this long for someone to be on every single ballot. Mariano should, but I think it's a travesty that he's the first when all these other great players should have had that distinction beforehand. So again, my argument's not that he shouldn't have been unanimous on every single ballot. He should, no doubt. Greatest closer ever. I guess my issue is the fact that some of these other players weren't afforded that honor. Some interesting notes about Mariano. He only allowed multiple earned runs in just one of his 96 postseason appearances. That was in the 2000 World Series against the Arizona Diamondbacks. We know how that ended, and that was the only time he gave up more than one run in a World Series, or actually a postseason appearance. 96 appearances, only once did more than one run get scored against him. He's the one of just 3 pitchers in Major League Baseball history to have 50 saves in a season. The other 2 shouldn't even be mentioned in the same breath with Mariano, but since I brought up the stat, I have to mention them. It's Eric Gagne and Jim Johnson. Rivera is the all-time postseason leader in ERA with an 0.70, games pitched at 96, saves with 42, and walks per plate appearance of 11.7. Truly dominating in every stretch of the imagination. And when you think about Mariano, if you know anything about him, which I do, he really was a failed starting pitcher with pretty good stuff who threw hard, and they said, hey, let's just, one last hurrah, let's just try him as a closer. And here we are all these years later as the absolute most dominating best closer of all time, Hall of Famer Mariano Rivera. Okay, on to the NFL. Had 2 overtime games in the AFC and NFC championships. But the talk after the games was not so much the games themselves as officiating and some blown calls and missed calls. And frankly, this year in the NFL, I'm a huge football fan. It was the worst year of officiating I've ever seen. I think when you talk about officiating more sometimes in the games and players themselves, you know that's not good. And, you know, let's get it right out there. That call or non-call in the Saints-Rams game on that pass interference of Roby Coleman against Tommy Lee Lewis. I mean, it's the easiest call I've ever seen to make. The contact was way early. He could have actually called one of any 3 flags he wanted to, from pass interference to leading with the helmet or hitting a defensive receiver. That play qualified for any or all 3. I think the most obvious one was pass interference. The contact was way before the ball was there. And it's sad. I'm not a Saints fan or a Rams fan. Truthfully, I wanted the Rams to win. But the fact that the Saints kind of lost a chance to go to the Super Bowl because of a play like that, it's anytime a referee or an official has that kind of impact on a game and the outcome, I'm not saying one play or one call necessarily loses the game. Someone could say, well, the Saints, if they played a little better, they wouldn't be even in that position. It's true, but that fact that call had that much of an effect on the outcome of the game is not good. It's a black eye for the NFL. The officiating this whole entire season has been terrible, to be blunt. I think it's sad. I think it takes away from the great game of football, and the fact that we're even having this discussion is a sad commentary in itself. And the fact that the Rams are in the Super Bowl, they had a great year, but that call is going to be, there are going to be people that point to that and say that team probably shouldn't be playing if that right call was made. Now, the Rams are no doubt a Super Bowl team. They won their division. They ran away with it. They're a loaded team. They have one of the best offenses in the league, if not the best offense. Their defense has a bunch of playmakers. Stat-wise, it's not always ranked up there, but they're loaded for bear with playmakers on that side of the ball. So I actually predicted them to win the game, but the fact that that game was marred so badly by that call is just unfortunate. Unfortunate is the word that comes to mind. What do you do about it? I mean, when the officiating is this bad, I think you got to do something. I think, the easy answer is you say you incorporate more replay. I think pass interferences, might slow the game down a little bit, but I think they should be reviewable. I think that's an important call. There's a lot of field position at stake on a pass interference call. I'm a Steeler fan, as you might know if you've heard the show before. There was a call in that Saints game on Joe Hayden where he didn't even touch the receiver, and he got called for a pass interference. Had that been reviewed, I'm sure that would have been reversed. I think this call was reversible with review. So, yeah, I think it's time. It's funny. I was telling my son that pass interferences should be reviewed, and that was before what happened in the Saints-Rams game. So I feel all the more strongly about that statement that I made. I also think, going to instant replay and reviews, the easy fix, I guess. But I think these referees need to start being accountable for their performance. Players, if they don't perform, they don't do well, they get cut, they're out of the league. I think the referees got to be in the same sort of boat. If they can't make the right call, if they can't make a call, if they can track stuff like this and grade stuff like this. I think they're already graded. I think when it's such a egregious bad display of officiating, I think there should be repercussions. I'm not advocating people necessarily losing their job. I hate to say that, but maybe they shouldn't be an official if they can't do the requirements of what the job entails. Maybe you suspend officials. They can't work for 4 weeks unpaid. I don't know what the answer is there. I guess replay is the obvious easy fix where you make some of these penalties reviewable in themselves to save some of these reps, for lack of a better term. But I just thought this year was terrible officiating, and it really put a damper on a great sport and a great season. A great season where we saw performances from Mahomes, Breeze, Gurley, the resurgence of Andrew Luck. He's back. We should be talking more about those performances, and we do talk about them, but I think the terrible calls and non-calls and officiating this year have really taken the forefront of the league this year, and I think it's unfortunate. And while I'm on a roll, let's go to the Chiefs-Patriots game. I hate to say it. I'm not a... Tom Brady's a great player. I don't think he's the greatest quarterback of all time. That's a topic for another day because I could spend too long on that. Being a Steeler fan, I think it's just naturally ingrained. You don't root for the Patriots. You hope they don't advance. and they did. And the other topic I want to talk about here in the playoffs is the overtime scenario and how it's set up. In the overtime, a couple things. When Kansas City scored with 2 minutes left, I knew for sure that Brady was going to go down and score and give him the lead. Fortunately, Mahomes led him back up to get a game-tying field goal, and it went to overtime. And you knew if the Patriots won that call on the toss, and they did, they were going to take the ball, and you knew Brady was going to go right up the field, dinking and dunking. I hate to say it, but that's the style of play and it works. You can't knock it. It works. It's successful, and they got a lot of jewelry with that kind of attack. And you knew they were going to dink and dunk kind of their way up the field and score a touchdown and end the game. And the Chiefs and Mahomes were never even going to touch the ball and get an opportunity to go to the Super Bowl. And I understand why the overtime rule's kind of like that. It's to protect the players, keep them healthy. They don't want a whole 15-minute quarter like it used to be way back when. But I think when you get into postseason, and even more specifically when you get into the conference championship game where the winner goes to the Super Bowl, the ultimate dream for any football player, even when they were kids, I don't necessarily think it's fair that one team wins a coin flip. The flip of a coin, in a sense, in this case, kind of determined who's going to the Super Bowl. And I know some will argue, well, Kansas City could have stopped them, or the defense didn't do their job. And I don't necessarily disagree with that sentiment, but it's a lot easier to score in today's day and age of the NFL with all the rules and penalties. It's a lot easier to put points on the board, and I think both teams should at least have an opportunity to touch the ball, to possess the ball, and that wasn't the case. And one team gets to advance to the Super Bowl. One team, although it had a great year, doesn't. I can go into my Andy Reid's not a great postseason coach rant, which I strongly believe. I don't think he's a guy I would hire if I was a GM to take me to that next level as a head coach. I think he's a great regular season coach, and then he gets out coached in the playoffs. But getting off tangent here, going back to the overtime rule, how do you fix it? I have a couple different thoughts. I think you could... one thing I would do, my first plan, make the overtime 10 minutes, and whatever happens in 10 minutes, whoever's winning the game, wins the game, okay? If for some reason it's tied after 10 minutes, then you play a 5-minute additional overtime period, and then additional 5-minute overtime periods after each one if you still remain tied, depending on how long that goes. The other theories I've heard or ideas I've heard is kind of like the college rule, but the one, I forgot who it was, I heard an analyst say instead of the 25, put the ball at the 50 and let both teams kind of possess the ball like that until someone wins the game. The only problem with that, it's what happens in college. You got games that are like 82-74, and it really kind of messes up the stats and the scoring records and that sort of thing. So my idea, 10-minute overtime period. If it's tied after that 10 minutes, you play an additional 5-minute period until someone ultimately wins the game. So what are your thoughts out there? What are your thoughts on how do we correct the officiating, the bad officiating? Do we just rely on replay to review bad calls only? Do we let bad officials go and people lose jobs? Do you like the way the overtime rules are set up now? How would you change it? Do you have a different idea than mine? And we'd love to hear it. We can even share it on the air if you like. So give me your feedback. How do we fix the great game of football with the bad officiating and the overtime rules as they stand now? The show has grown, and we are very appreciative of that fact. If you are a business, a dealer, a breaker that would like to partner with us, please reach out to us at one of our social medias or email the show at sportscardnationpc@gmail.com. That's sportscardnationpc@gmail.com. We have many affordable options to promote and highlight the services you provide. We look forward to hearing from you and collaborating with you in the future. Lasting 25 years in any industry is impressive. Lasting 25 as a sports card store is rarely seen. But Newman Sports Cards has been doing just that since 1992, providing excellent customer service and a great selection of rookies, autos, game used, and graded cards. Recently, they added wax products and supplies to their arsenal. To find them, just Google search Newman Sports Cards or follow them on Instagram at Newman Sports Cards. Just want to do a little closing on the show. I want to thank Tim Virgilio again for joining us. I urge everyone out there, donate to Signatures for Soldiers. It's a great cause, helping America's veterans that need our help, that are injured or homeless. So it's a win-win. You know, the card industry, card hobby, helping someone less fortunate that gave some of themselves to the freedoms we have to card collect. All right, February 1st will be episode 11 for the Sports Card Nation podcast. It's going to be huge. It's going to be our first ever Super Bowl week podcast. And you got to go big. And when you got to go big, you're going to get a big guest. And our big guest next week, I'm thrilled. I'm excited. He's a gentleman I have a lot of admiration for. He's a role model for kind of what I do, a trendsetter for the sports card podcast niche. I'm a fan of his show. I listen to pretty much every episode, and I'm honored that he's agreed to come on and banter with us a little bit about the hobby, about Beckett. He's none other than Eric Norton, the legend from Fat Pack's podcast. So once again, I want to thank everyone for listening to us. It's something you don't have to do. You choose to do it. We're appreciative of that fact. I want to say that each and every episode. It doesn't go unnoticed, and it keeps us going. Thank you. We'll see you for the big Super Bowl show in 7 days. God bless.
You've been listening to the Sports Card Nation podcast. Join host John Newman next week as he gives you another jam-packed episode of all things related to the sports card hobby. And a little extra fun, too. Don't forget to check out the show on Instagram at Sports Card Nation Podcast.